So lads, today the referees gave the report on the situation, and it's even worse. It's even worse than I imagined, and it was pretty grim. Like, it was a pretty grim overall
The latest Fever Liberty meeting was supposed to be nothing more than an ordinary regular season game, another evening in a long schedule that both teams would largely forget once the playoffs arrived. Instead, it collapsed into the clearest, loudest proof to date that the WNBA has an officiating crisis it can no longer wave away.
Yesterday game was horrendous, bro. I mean, it was bad. I mean, this one might be one for the ages, bro. I can't even lie. The referees just exposed their hand so bad, bro. I mean, they just didn't care no more. They didn't care. The world was watching how bad the cause was. They didn't care at all. They was going to get their issue off against the Fever no matter what. And I'm here to tell you, that's exactly what went down, bro. I mean, they got their issue off in a major way, bro. I mean, there was countless of times I could literally look at the screen and know that was a foul.
With polite press releases and vague promises about continued evaluation. From the opening tip, every neutral observer could feel the imbalance. Possessions featuring bruising contact on Caitlin Clark drew silent whistles. Far lighter bumps awarded New York an automatic stroll to the free throw line. Anyone with a pause button quickly flooded social media with slow-motion evidence, captioned in bold disbelief.
Here, it took us 4 games for Stephanie White to say, I've had enough. It's taken 4 games for Stephanie White to say, you know what? I've had absolute enough. Game 1, okay. Game 2, okay. Game 3, all right. But today was the last straw when it came for Stephanie White. The New York Liberty get to the free throw line 32 times. The Indiana Fever this season have a discrepancy minus 31 when it comes to free throws. That doesn't seem right.
By the end of the first quarter, those clips were already ricocheting through group chats, fan forums, and national television studios. The conversation was no longer about who might win. It was about whether the rules were being enforced at all, and why the officiating had turned Clark's every foray into the lane into a high-risk experiment in selective vision. What bothered people most was not a single blown call. Referees are human. Mistakes happen. What shook the audience, what sent coaches and former players into late-night rants on YouTube and TikTok, was the unbroken pattern. Hand-checking an opponent 28 feet from the basket? Whistle. 2 free throws, provided the defender was wearing Liberty blue. A forearm across Clark's shoulder followed by a slap at the ball that caught more wrists than leather. Play on, nothing to see here. An entire possession could pass in which the rookie was bodied, tripped, elbowed, and finally shoved off her spot, only for the ball to swing the other way and an Indiana forward to earn an offensive foul for barely extending an arm.
You remember how last year started? You remember the lopsided officiating that we got last year? The All-Star break comes around, the Olympic break rolls around, and then what did we hear from Lynn Dunn? Lynn Dunn goes on the Dan Dockage show, and she calls out the officiating. She calls out the referee. She calls out the WNBA. The lopsidedness that is being shown not in favor of the Indiana Fever. The clear biases when it comes to foul calls. The clear biases when it comes to not calling foul calls. Last year, it took us halfway through.
And this is what the referee set up. Why was JC Sheldon's foul upgraded to flagrant 1? In the judgment of the officials, the foul by Sheldon was unnecessary. The contact to Clark's face. Furthermore, there was a wind-up and impact, and the contact to face carries potential for injury. How did you come to the conclusion that that is a flagrant 1? How did you come up to the conclusion that it was unnecessary? There was a wind-up, and it was to the face. The 3 of them that is a flagrant 2. By definition, you've described.
It was so blatant that even neutral broadcasters usually allergic to second-guessing the officials in real time, began slipping incredulous asides into the play-by-play. "I don't know what more Clark has to endure to get a whistle," one analyst muttered after another no call left her adjusting her headband on the hardwood. The imbalance wasn't subtle in the box score, either. By Knights and New York had attempted 32 free throws. Indiana, 1. Not a typo. A -31 differential that would raise eyebrows if it occurred in an NBA game featuring a notorious flopper and the least disciplined defense in the league. Here it felt like malpractice.
Watching the WNBA and seeing how things are run, seeing how things are done, and after you've seen what it looks like to get it right, and you come in and see something looking really wrong, you're going to call it out. It is what it is. You're going to be critical of players if they do something shady or classless. You're going to call that out.
How much they make. And there's one section that really stood out to me, and they break down essentially why they are making the calls that they make. And they also talk about the influx of new fans flooding to the WNBA. They talk about Caitlin Clark a little bit. This article to me was really telling. It actually came out in January.
Fans frantically compiled spreadsheets showing that through 4 games the Fever were already 31 attempts in the red, a figure that dwarfed the next worst margin in the standings. Coaches around the league texted beat writers to admit, off the record, that they no longer understood how much contact was legal when Clark had the ball. Stephanie White tried to bite her tongue in the first week of the season. "Control what we can control," she told reporters after 2 narrow defeats layered with questionable whistles. By the 4th game, this game, she snapped. Early in the 3rd quarter, she watched Clark absorb a hip check that sent her sliding across the lane, no call, and then saw her rookie whistled for a push-off on the very next trip.
Start off by sharing that the officiating in the WNBA became as hot button of an issue as any. Heated debates surrounding the league's physicality dominated the headlines, particularly when Indiana Fever star rookie Caitlin Clark was subject to several intentional fouls. Now, they also brought up Game 5 of the WNBA Finals. We actually made a whole video about that as well, because there were some suspect calls at the end of that game, and a lot of people felt like the WNBA Finals were actually
The WNBA refs are the worst. They really are the worst.
We got to unpaint these narratives. They all have heart. All the mannerisms in basketball are the same. This is going to be the same. I'm not a bad person.
Wait, hold up, wait. You be pushing refs, Angel?
I ain't never pushed them, but I've gotten in their face. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause, you know.
Even when you watch the MNBA, I would pray for, and Scott Foster sucks, but I would pray for a Scott Foster in the WNBA. Some of these women's refs, I don't know if you feel this way, Angel, but they have a
Clipboard met hardwood. Words she would later half apologize for echoed off the scorer's table. The technical foul that followed felt inevitable, maybe even cathartic. If the league office needed a public cry for help, it had one. The reaction was immediate. Longtime fans admitted they had never seen social media unite around a WNBA grievance so quickly. Hashtags questioning the referees trended above playoff hockey highlights and off-season NFL rumors. YouTube channels that usually post once a week spit out reaction videos before midnight, each pulling the same clips, each daring the league to issue a statement. By noon the next day, SB Nation's January article explaining how WNBA officials are recruited, trained, and paid was resurfacing everywhere. The piece described tiny salaries, part-time commitments, seasonal scramble drills that send refs from college tournaments directly into pro arenas with minimal transition.
I mean, you would think with what they say coming into the season, you know, Kathy was made it her business to let them know that, you know, referees is going to be getting assessed for this next season and make sure they're making the right, proper calls. Man, at this point, we need NBA refs all the time, bro. I don't want these YMCA, junior league, high school ass referees, bro. We need real life refs, because as of right now, they're costing the Indiana Fever major games that they definitely need to win.
I've said it before and I will say it again. The WNBA as an organization is insufferable, and you would be hard pressed to find another organization that is as committed to self-imploding as the WNBA.
There is no place in basketball for somebody to be poked in the eye, and like then they're saying Caitlin Clark is flopping. In what world is she flopping? Oh, she flailed and she fell over. For crying out loud, that girl, JC Sheldon, should have been kicked out of the game. She should have received a flagrant 2. There's no reason why you need to poke somebody. Listen, I get it. She's playing her hard. She's guarding her. It's basketball. aside from the viewership and the recordship and the media, it's just a basketball game. I totally get that. There's no place in basketball for like that. These WNBA refs need to fix.
It quoted anonymous executives admitting that staffing shortages made accountability difficult. Most damning was a short paragraph noting that evaluations are performed internally, rarely published, almost never accompanied by concrete discipline. Outsiders suddenly understood why the same names kept popping up in the L2M last 2-minute reports with no apparent consequence. Those reports, by the way, only fueled the anger. The league released its post-game review and concluded that a fourth-quarter fall on Liberty guard Maureen Yohannes, initially ruled incidental contact, should have been upgraded to a flagrant one because it struck Clark in the face with unnecessary wind-up. Critics pointed out that the description, wind-up, impact to the head, potential for injury, matches the literal handbook definition of a flagrant 2, an automatic ejection. When asked why it stopped at flagrant 1, the same report offered no elaboration. To fans, it looked like doublespeak, admitting the error while still minimizing it. In most professional leagues, the next step is obvious. The commissioner emerges, acknowledges the visual evidence, promises reform, maybe suspends an official for a game or two to restore a sense of order. Instead, the WNBA's high command went dark. No interview, no statement. Reporters lobbed questions at the weekly media availability and received platitudes about constantly reviewing best practices. Even supporters of Kathy Engelbert struggled to defend the silence.
Look at things a little bit holistically. I think Caitlin Clark is a really hard player to officiate, much like Diana Taurasi was throughout the course of her career, for a couple of reasons. Caitlin Clark regularly gets picked up in the full court. She also gets blitzed more over the course of her career than any player in WNBA history or in that period of time. And she also creates some contact herself on the offensive end of the floor. She is very difficult to officiate because of all of the contact that's happening around her all of the time. That being said, I was in contact with a number of WNBA coaches yesterday about this topic of the officiating in the WNBA, and all of them said it needs.
There's no other way to say it. Caitlin Clark is being treated like she committed a crime against basketball.
This was the biggest star the sport had produced in 2 decades, and the league appeared content to watch her become a crash test dummy for frustrated veterans and overmatched refs. Clark herself never lashed out. She kept the answers measured, the frustration visible only in the tightening of her post-game smile. Still, the toll was obvious. The easy swagger that defined her Iowa years had turned into caution. Breakaway layups came with a half-second glance over the shoulder to locate the trailing defender likely to shove her at the rim. 3-point attempts rose a little quicker, released a hair earlier, as if buying an extra inch of daylight before someone crashed recklessly into her landing space. Mental fatigue arrives fast when every whistle feels like a coin toss. Meanwhile, the league's marketing machine kept asking her to film commercials, sign jerseys, pose for photos at youth clinics. Grow the game, they said. Be the face of women's basketball, they said. Yet the very infrastructure meant to protect that face crumbled in plain view. Opposing coaches hatched game plans built around physical blitzes. Veteran guards, some nursing chips on their shoulders about the hype surrounding a rookie, ramped up the trash talk. The referees, unprepared for the convergence of media scrutiny and exponentially faster play, froze. It is not difficult to see where this road leads if nothing changes. Eventually, Clark will land awkwardly after another uncalled push, sprain an ankle, miss 2 weeks. Ratings will dip. Arenas will fall short of sellouts. The momentum the WNBA has fought 27 years to capture will stall. One player cannot carry a league whose own officials keep tying shoelaces together. Fans who discover the product through Clark will not stay if they believe the competition is rigged or incompetent.
With the increased attention this year, there's also been increased scrutiny about the quality of refereeing. Curious if there has been any conversation about whether it's referee pay, referee training, anything to ensure that is as good as it can be.
Obviously, not every, they're humans, looking at technology. Basketball is a little more complex than tennis, for instance, around technology of officiating. So we're looking at a variety of different dimensions. I know it's a passionate issue. Every fan group, I love when I go into market and every fan group I meet with, they usually wait and ask it as the last question of the night, but they do ask about officiating, which I appreciate.
At some point, the television executives now clamoring for additional broadcasts will quietly move on to the next streaming fad. That is why Stephanie White's explosion matters. It puts the burden back where it belongs. On leadership, the Fever coach has nothing to gain by antagonizing referees who control her team's immediate fate, yet she chose public confrontation because private channels have failed. If the league office punishes her, it will only reinforce the perception that honesty is unwelcome. If it ignores her, the silence will speak volumes. What would accountability look like? It starts with transparency. Publish complete reports on all referee evaluations, not just fourth quarter mistakes. Introduce escalating suspensions for officials with repeated accuracy issues, the same way the NBA tracks missed calls. Pair the most experienced crews with nationally televised games featuring Clark until the less seasoned referees catch up. Expand pay so top college officials have incentive to stay full-time rather than juggling multiple jobs. Adopt limited coaches' challenges on personal fouls. The technology already exists, and the women's game is too fast to rely solely on 3 sets of naked eyes. Most of all, the commissioner must speak. Acknowledging public frustration does not undermine referees. It protects them by clarifying standards. Fans are willing to forgive mistakes they understand. What they will not tolerate is a conspiracy of silence that insults their intelligence. The WNBA is at an inflection point. Embrace the spotlight or retreat into the shadows of niche sports where scrutiny is minimal, but so are sponsorship dollars. Caitlin Clark deserves a fair whistle because every athlete does, but also because she is the league's clearest path to legitimacy. She sells out buildings in minutes, lifts local television ratings into NBA territory, attracts casual viewers who did not know the Fever existed 6 months ago. To stunt that phenomenon with inconsistent officiating is more than negligent. It is self-sabotage. The next game is in a few days. The cameras will zoom even closer. Social media will hover with screen capture buttons primed. Another night like the last one, and the uproar will double. At some point, the WNBA must decide what kind of story it wants to tell. The rise of a generational star supported by a modern, professional structure, or the cautionary tale of a league that begged for attention, got it, and folded under the glare. The ball, for once, is not in Caitlin Clark's hands. It is in the commissioner's.
You lost control of the game.
I said you lost control of the game, and here's what happened is those refs around allowed that type of play to happen. That just opens up the rest of the game to say, do you see what I got away with? I'm going to be able to get away with other things too. And that's exactly what I said. That's a dangerous game. That is a unsafe game for players to be a part of because it allows for the other team to make some really nasty, maybe just